statistical, so unpredictable, here on SNL Stats.
Yes, that is right. Hello, everybody. My name is Jon Schneider from SNL Stats, and I am so excited to be here today to talk about one of my favorite new shows, Ted Lasso, with the great Jason Sudeikis from Saturday Night Live. I cannot wait to discuss everything from the first 2 episodes of season 2 with an incredible panel we have here tonight. First up, it is my man, TJ Randolph. TJ has joined us on SNL coverage, That Damn Michael Che, and he will be joining us much more in the near future as we head towards season 47 of SNL. So TJ, how are you?
I'm feeling blessed, black, and highly favored, John. I'm very glad to be here. I have really enjoyed getting a chance to listen to SNL Stats as well as talk with you guys. And I've decided from now on, I'm not going to be as nice because I've shown you guys too many compliments, and I need to hold myself back. I need to humble myself from the kindness. So I'm going to switch, kind of going against the grain a little bit and be just a little more neutral.
All right. We'll take it. But then you got to change your Instagram handle. So I'm going to be watching out for that.
King Negativity? Is that King Toxic? No.
Yeah. King Toxic? No, we'll skip that one. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, TJ. Also joining us is Rebecca North. I get so excited every time I get to talk to Rebecca. She's so enthusiastic about everything we talk about, and she joined us earlier in the summer to talk about Girls 5 Eva. Rebecca, how are you?
I'm good. I'm not as nice as TJ, but so I will be giving my harsh critiques as always. But I'm happy to be back.
That's what we look for. So we don't want this panel isn't just about niceness. We want to hear the real thoughts about everything we're talking about. And joining us for the first time, I know he is a nice guy, so I just have to say it. But this is one of our listeners that I've spoken to for the last few months. He listened to our coverage of Saturday Night Live. He got in touch with me and he said, "Hey, John, I would love to talk about SNL with you guys and join you." And I said, okay, well, we are going to be talking about Ted Lasso, and you are British, so this might be a very good way to get you on the show, and you'll be joining us much more in the future. So Matthew Nichols, how are you?
I am later than you guys because of the time difference, just pointing that out, but I'm probably not as nice as TJ and not as glamorous as Rebecca, but it's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you, Matthew. Matthew, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? I know the listeners know TJ and Rebecca, but fill them in. They're going to be hearing a lot from you coming up. So tell us about yourself.
Sure. Well, so I'm Matthew, and I'm British. I live in Manchester, UK, and I'm sort of like, as you said in the intro, I guess sort of long-time listener, first-time caller, big SNL fan, and I suppose that's what I loved at listening to the podcast was when you had British hosts or things that reference Britain. I think I was really interested in how things land differently over here where I am to what you guys see over there, and vice versa. So by day, I'm a drama teacher. I'm an author as well. So I suppose I look at SNL in that way, kind of as a performance thing as well, and kind of from an acting and a writing background. And I know we're not here to talk SNL tonight, but my fun SNL fact is I've never actually seen it go out live, even though it's called Saturday Night Live, because of the time difference and scheduling. I've never actually seen it. So yeah, it's really great to be able to at least talk Ted Lasso today.
Yes, for sure. And we're going to make sure to get you to watch SNL live one day. So it's going to happen, Matthew. We'll make sure of it. But let's talk Ted Lasso. I mean, that's what we're here for. So, you may be joining us and listening and have watched every episode of Ted Lasso so far, or you may have never seen it before. And that's okay, because we're going to explain to you exactly what Ted Lasso is and why you should check it out. You will get spoiled. So just warning you, we're going to be talking about, what happened in season 1 and what happened in the first 2 episodes. So if you haven't checked it out, maybe you will from now on. But thank you for joining us. So let's talk about season 1, what Ted Lasso was about. And really, for me, I don't know if you guys knew this, but Ted Lasso was a Jason Sudeikis character that actually came from a commercial, I believe. I believe it was when NBC got the rights to the Premier League, the Premier Soccer League. It was a big deal for NBC. I believe, Matthew, maybe you can tell me if the Premier League is that the most watched soccer league in America? Like, would you know that?
I wouldn't know that, and my knowledge of football is much shakier than my knowledge of SNL and comedy. But the Premier League is a big deal over here. So when you see in the most recent episode, the reference to Manchester City as a football club, like I'm in Manchester, they're a big deal. So we are very much a football country and football cities, and it can be quite tribal in loyalties. I don't know how it all lands over there, but it's those clubs though, that whole season is a huge thing over here.
Yeah, for sure. And I know like Beard, one of the characters on the show, made a reference to this about saying, yeah, it's like when Americans call football soccer. So I'm going to try my best if I'll say like European football or soccer. I don't know what the right terminology is, but hopefully the listeners will be able to follow along. So let me give a quick summary of what season one. Yeah, go ahead, TJ. What are you going to say?
No, so while I was doing some notes earlier today, found that like same thing about that it was a couple of old sketches that they did for NB Sports to promote the Premier League. What I also liked was when you're watching it, because I just watched the pilot for the first time a couple of weeks ago. I only got Apple TV because I wanted to watch Mythic Quest. But so Ted Lasso was like something I sunk into the past couple of weeks, and I noticed a lot of jokes from the pilot are things that Ted does in that sketch from 8 years ago, and I just thought that was like a nice little tidbit.
No, it's a great tidbit, honestly, and it's not a sketch that was on SNL. It was a sketch that was created for to promote NBC getting the Premier League. So it was really just a commercial. But yeah, so that's really what inspired it. And then I believe it was, if I understand the story correctly, it was Jason's wife at the time, Olivia Wilde, who encouraged Jason to push creating the show and said, like, you have something really good here. And he really wasn't sure if he wanted to do it. And then she pushed him to do it. Obviously, they're not together anymore, but this was something that he seemed to really be hesitant to do. And then it just like took off. Like Ted Lasso was like, there was Ted Lasso mania last year. And now people are really like catching up for season 2. So I'm going to give like the brief summary, and then we'll go around and we'll talk about, our thoughts about this overall show. What is it really about, and why does it resonate with so many people? So basically, Rebecca Welton is the owner of AFC Richmond. That is one of the soccer teams that is there in England. And her ex-husband, Rupert, they had gotten divorced, and Rebecca got to keep the soccer team. And as a way of getting back at her husband, wanted the team to suck, because that was his favorite thing in the entire world, was AFC Richmond and making sure that they would do well. So she decided to bring over an American college football coach, I believe Division II college football from Kansas City. And that's Ted Lasso. That's Jason Sudeikis. So he comes over with his assistant coach Beard, and during season 1, it's really their adventures with the different members of the team and the different coaches. And it's really the great thing is that it's not your typical comedy. When you would think of like Jason coming from SNL, you see like all the other comedies that cast created. This is so different because it's so heartwarming, the show. And the comedy isn't like so upfront, it's baked in. And we're going to get into the more details about the show, but that's the reason why I think it resonates with so many people, is because it's not your typical American sitcom. So let's go around the roundtable. Let's talk, before we get into season 2, what did we like from that first season? What did we, what resonated with us and with the overall audience as a whole? So TJ, let's start with you.
So I had a few things, but like I can mention a couple things and then come back. I don't want to like overtake it, but so I didn't know this because I think I'd heard about Ted Lasso honestly from you guys first, and I was like, oh, Jason Sudeikis is doing a new thing. That's cool, and I kind of put it in the back of my head because I wanted to. It was like, I'm not going to get Apple TV for one show, and then there was a couple other things I wanted to check out because I knew Schmigadoon was coming out. I'm really into Mythic Quest. That's a whole other beast. I love that show, and so went ahead into Ted Lasso. I was like, all right, let me check this out. And as I'm watching it, and the credits, I see Mr. Bill Lawrence. Now, I don't know if anyone else is a fan of Bill Lawrence, but he's I don't know if it was creator or co-creator of Scrubs, Cougar Town, Ground Floor, Whiskey Cavalier. The man has done some awesome television shows in the past 20 years. And I'm a huge fan of him, especially of Scrubs and of Cougar Town. They're some of my favorite comedies like of all time. And so when I saw his name, that's what got my attention. I like Jason Sudeikis a lot. Honestly, anytime any SNL actor throws on a Midwestern accent or a mustache, you have my attention. But the Bill Lawrence thing is what like drew me in even more. And so when I was watching that old sketch, not the old sketch, the old NBC Sports sketch, you can actually see Coach Beard is in those sketches as well. Brandon Hunt or whatever his name is and he's like also credited as one of the developers and like the writers. So like he's been with Jason like working on this like since then, and I thought it was like a really nice like little small detail because he's barely in a couple of shots in that old sketch. Um, I think what also got me to keep watching the first episode was seeing the Running Man. I'm a big what's up with that sketch fan. So anytime Jason would come into frame in that red tracksuit and start dancing, I'd watch that video 8 more times because just that it gave me such delight and joy. So I was like, I gotta watch whatever this is. But like on the more sentimental note, there were 2 very specific like heartwarming things I really dug. I liked the moment where Rebecca, who at first I was like, oh, she's petty, and then you met Rupert and he's trash, and you're like, okay, I get why she's not petty. This guy's trash. But then she goes and like she goes and tells Ted like what she did. The thing I like about the show is there's a way that they do apologies, and I don't know what it is. It's very authentic. There's no, I know it's a performance, but there's something about like the way they do a really good authentic apology, as well as the way that Ted shows forgiveness is a way I haven't seen in television before, but is a very authentic way that people can act in real life. And so I really liked that depiction of like people taking ownership of what they did, as well as people being able to forgive other people. We see that a little bit in season 2 as well. And I also like that, like, the moment when you see the divorce kind of strike Ted, and you see that, okay, he's not happy and nice all the time. He is still a real human being, and he can be wrecked. So I thought he was going to be perfect character, but he can be kind of wrecked, and Jason can be challenged to like perform. And I just found those as very got me in the feels. Honestly, the divorce thing almost made me cry. Like I can't even lie.
Yeah, for sure. So that's the interesting contrast that we see in this show, especially in season 1, is you have Rebecca, the owner of the team, who just got divorced, and then it's like out for vengeance. And then you have this guy, Ted Lasso, who's the coach, and he is, super funny and witty and, like an amazing coach. Like everyone's like, oh, he's like America's dad. He's like America's coach. And then he has this like inner turmoil almost because he's actually getting divorced as well. And in season 1, you see his wife and his kid actually come over to Europe, and it's like a really heartwarming episode. So let's turn to our Rebecca. Rebecca, tell me what your thoughts are on Ted Lasso from what you saw from season 1.
Every time you say Rebecca, I like think you're talking to me or about me. But I started watching Ted Lasso right when I saw Jason Sudeikis had a new show coming out. I had that year-long subscription to Apple from like the device, and I have not used it. And I was like, you know what? I'll check this out. And if I'm not mistaken, they dropped like 3 episodes at once, like in last August. Like originally they did 3 at once, and I started watching it from the get-go, and I came in with that mindset, oh, it's going to be similar to a Parks and Rec or something like you've seen past SNL cast members do. And it just wasn't like that off the bat. And then I also am a huge Scrubs fan. And once I saw it was Bill Lawrence, and it kind of made more sense to me to be like, okay, he has the Jason Sudeikis of it all, but it's not the typical comedy we see from past SNL casts, which I really did appreciate. And it is just super heartwarming. When I was telling my friends to watch, I'm like, it's funny, but it's not like you're not going to be sitting there laughing the whole time. You're kind of going to be smiling to yourself. So one of my favorite things that kind of hooked me just made me fall in love with Ted is he gives Rebecca, he's trying to win Rebecca over to like her, and brings her these little biscuits or something every morning, this little dessert every morning. And she was like, where are you getting these from? And she's so fixated on it. And then they showed to a scene where he's making it in his kitchen, just trying to get her to like you. And it really shows how kind he is and exactly what type of character that they're portraying. Because I was curious. I was like, is there going to be a twist at all? Is he going to go out there on the field and then just be like really aggressive? And he just kills everyone with kindness. And it really shows how it works. And one of my favorite other characters is Roy. And just Roy's one of the soccer players on the team. He's kind of the veteran of the team. And he doesn't perform as well as he used to in his peak time on the team. And he's really hard, and he just curses, and he's super just macho and aggressive. But then you just see that he kind of has a heart of gold at the same time, and he feels for people. And I really like the individual character development of each of the characters, Roy being one, Keely being another, who's kind of seemed like she was very surface level. There wasn't much deeper to her. And I actually, like, she's one of my favorite characters in the show because she really kind of seems like, oh, ditzy. And she just is dating like the hot, like, star player of the show who kind of sucks. And then she ends up being like, hey, I'm done with you. And then ends up dating Roy. And it's a really interesting pairing to have someone who is at 110% all the time be with Roy, who is just like, oh, leave me alone. Like, I'm not doing this right now. So I really like the way that they put the thought into each individual character. And I suspect that they sat down, they're like, what is each character going to do? What's the trajectory for each of them? And we're even seeing that in season 2. Like, a lot of the storylines are not continued on in terms of, like, they're not harping on things. They're giving a lot of the characters like new experiences and new storylines. And I'm really starting to like that already in these first 2 episodes.
Yeah, for sure. Matthew, let me get your thoughts on the show as a whole. Obviously, you're coming, from a different perspective. So let us know, how you feel. How do you feel about it? And how do people, from your area feel about Ted Lasso?
Well, I mean, I don't want to start on a really, really negative note, but
do it. I want to hear your thoughts.
Do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's hear it. Yeah.
So I think season 1 is just about okay. Bombshell. So over here, I would say that this might be a strange way into it, but that Jason Sudeikis is probably the least famous cast member in this country. You might know him from We're the Millers or Horrible Bosses, but you have to remember that we don't have SNL broadcast in the UK. Certainly not regularly, certainly not weekly. So to most people, he might be, oh, that guy from, oh, was it that thing? Or maybe it was Horrible Bosses, So whereas the rest of the cast, like, to give you an illustration, the character that Annette Badland plays, she's the foul-mouthed pub landlady who pops up in, she's a really well-known actor over here. So the whole kind of, the axis is tipped. But somebody said to me, I like our Rebecca, I'd got Apple TV on a freebie thing. So I gave it a go on a recommend, and I had been meaning to because I like Jason Sudeikis, and to me, he's most famous for SNL. But all of the other actors in its British setting, really, I thought, this is going to be great. And I just felt that it's the problem, I think, with the workplace comedy. And we've seen that thing where you take an American actor and put them in a British setting. Like, if Andy Samberg in Cuckoo. There was, I can't remember the name of it, a police sitcom, bizarre comedy over here that had Lindsay Lohan in it. And so it's
what is this?
It is true, and she's good in it. I don't know why I'm surprised. I think Lindsay Lohan's a really good comic performer, but it's so unusual to see it. So I'm watching England and football depicted through an Americanization, and it's a bit strange at times. And for me, I think this worked well because it hit in the UK during lockdown, and it is like Rebecca says, you're going to smile rather than laugh. It's such a lovely show. It was so enjoyable, but I just felt that it didn't really hit its stride. Like, oh, here comes Ted. He's so nice. He wants coffee, but we only have tea in England. Ho, ho, ho. But played with enormous enthusiasm and such warmth by Jason Sudeikis. And all I could think of was that first season of Parks and Rec, where they sort of got it a bit wrong, and they rethought the Leslie Knope character and the dynamic of the people around her after season 1, because Ted Lasso is such a good guy. It's really hard to see where the conflict might arise for me. Apart from the obvious things, she's Rebecca's scheming. She hates her husband. There's the head to head with the players. So for me, it was fine, but I think that the first 2 episodes of season 2 are better, significantly better than all of season 1.
I was going to say, I'm kind of not surprised because this is one of the first European football television shows that we're really getting, and it's super mainstream and popularized in America. So it's a new and exciting thing for us, learn more about the football culture and to see what it's like and to have that American take. I'm imagining the US office versus the UK office. It's different humor, and we the tea versus coffee. I probably chuckled when they had that, but it's so annoying for you to have to hear that all the time from American jokes about England and all of that. So I'm actually not super surprised to hear you say that.
So you saying that the first season was just okay, I agree with you until up to a point. because actually, fun fact, like I said, I got Apple TV because I have an Android, by the way, so I didn't have this like free access. I have a smart TV which gave me access to it because all my other devices are Alexas or Google, so I was like, oh, since I have access to it, I'll give it a shot. Why not? Again, watch Mythic Quest is great. But when I went to watch Ted Lasso, I watched the first 2 episodes. I was like, I gave everything the first 2 episodes. And I was like, all right, this is all right. It's okay. Like I can tell there should be a lot I should like here, but it was just okay. And so I stopped watching it actually. This was a few weeks ago. Then John hits me up and is like, "Hey, do you want to cover Ted Lasso?" And I'm like, "I have the time. I'm down. Let's do it." Only because of this show did I continue watching Ted Lasso. I didn't rule it out. I just was like, it didn't grab me. I am so glad that I kept watching because around the time that Ted starts to meet with his wife and then his ex-wife, that's what hooked me. But that's not everyone is going to be brought in on 5 episodes, you know. And I'm not saying the show is bad because it's not all. I think it's a really good show, but I do agree with you about the just okayness because, like, I agree with your thought about the first season of Parks and Rec or the first season of The Office or even the first 6 episodes of BoJack Horseman. Comedies that have these slow starts and they kind of have that good like punch middle and then it's like, oh, that's your hook. But so I am glad because now I'm a fan, but I do agree with you about that kind of like I don't know why they use that noise.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like a compelling noise. I think that also that thing where we're talking about, the divorce from his wife, is that meant to give the season this undercurrent of like humanity and melancholy that we're meant to engage with in the way that the UK version of The Office, if you've seen that, it ran for sort of 2 seasons and 2 specials, so it's much more condensed than the American version. But that obviously went in on the lead character, the the Ricky Gervais or Steve Carell character. But actually, you realise after 2-3 seasons you were watching this for the romance that was blossoming and developing. And I think, is that what Ted Lasso was trying to bed in during season 1, that we're meant to start caring about these characters? Because I sort of thought, particularly the very first, the pilot, the first episode, they were quite cartoon-like, some of these characters in their initial, the way they came across initially. And I think the point that Rebecca made before about Haley and what a likable character she is, I think a lot of that comes from Juno Temple fleshing out that character to be more than she was. I think she's much more interesting even in the first 2 episodes of season 2, but that comes from force of her as an actor. And by the way, that sitcom with Lindsay Lohan was called The Sick Note.
Oh,
Yeah,
I definitely did look it up.
I think that there was a reason that they dropped a bunch of episodes initially to kind of get people in and set the scene and like caricatures of the characters and in terms of the development in the long run. But I also think it was super interesting, me being like a pop culture nerd, to see that Jason Sudeikis created the show going through a really rough divorce. And then when I go back and watch it and found out that he was going through a pretty like hard divorce at the same exact time in real life. And when I rewatched it like these past few weeks, I was like, wow, that's even more sad than it seemed on the show because it probably came from a lot of personal experiences.
I'm so glad you brought that up because literally a couple of hours ago when I was watching the last episode, I was thinking back on the first season of like, what are some things I liked from the first season? And I thought to myself, because I'm thinking about this so much in the vein of Bill Lawrence, because that's where I have like the deeper knowledge of shows. And so I was like, where did Bill Lawrence get this strong, theme of like divorce? Because it's not just one divorce in this thing, it's two. It's 2 divorces in a breakup. Like Keely, Rebecca, in Ted, they all have some type of like a separation from like a person. And I'm like, where's Bill Lawrence getting this? I know him and his wife are good. They're like this. Sorry for the listeners, I'm crossing my fingers. They're tight right now. Who on earth, where is this coming from? And I'm so stupid because as I was looking at like the credits and saying, oh, like here's the co-creators and stuff, not even thinking I didn't even know about like Jason Sudeikis's like who he was with, and so I was like, that's where this is coming from. I was just from a creative perspective, who is bringing this gravitas to the to like who's bringing that? Yeah.
For sure, TJ. And also, like, for anybody who followed Jason's arc on SNL, they know that, behind the scenes, he is a very, emotional and thoughtful person. There was like a lot of discussion about, when he was leaving the show and if he should leave for many years, for SNL stuff. And a lot of the community of SNL knew that it was just like a very tough decision for him. They weren't sure if he was happy, and he's always just been a very emotional guy. So it's really cool to see the character that he is playing and how him as a person translates to Ted Lasso. But I just want to say, like, from my experience in watching season 1, I had a very similar thing where I actually was looking for something during quarantine to watch. I had spoken to my father, who, we're both pretty big American sports guys. And I was like, hey, college football coach is going to go overseas and like coach a soccer team. Like, let's just watch it and check it out. And then, partway through, we would watch them like on, once every couple nights or whatever. And I was like, how are you enjoying it? And he was like, there's not enough soccer. He's like, I wanted more sports. Like, that's where he was like, there's a lot of like drama here, but it's not enough soccer. And it really wasn't until the divorce stuff, and then they started taking the characters out of the football stadium and bringing them, like on like to an away game where they would go to a different city. And like the characters, once they moved from their environment, they actually became much more interesting. So I'm curious if we're going to see the same thing in season 2. But before we get to season 2, I do want to go through some of the names of the list, some of the characters we haven't mentioned, just so all the listeners understand all the players involved. If somebody wants to chime in, feel free. Like, let's just go through these pretty quickly. So we spoke about Rebecca, we spoke about Ted, and we're going to cover those more as we go. Those are really our 2 main characters as we talk about things. Like I said, Ted comes over with Beard. Coach Beard is the assistant coach. Anyone want to give a word on Coach Beard, what they think about his character?
His name says it all. Coach Beard. He's just like, he just has a lot of one-liners. He doesn't speak much. When he does, it's always something funny.
Anybody else?
Did anybody else wonder there's a couple of frames of this where Brendan Hunt, which I believe is the name of the actor, is framed the way that he speaks. There's this tiny piece of me that's thinking, I wonder what it'd be like if Will Forte was the one playing this character. Like, Will Forte couldn't be quiet enough, so it'd be a completely different character, but it was more just, I think it was their face as I was looking at it. But like, I think Coach Beard, he gets really good lines. I was wondering, why is he here in the first couple episodes? But I do like him as kind of like a helping Ted kind of like see things a little more clearly.
I think he's probably my favorite character overall. He's so beautifully played. He's so played with such subtlety and understatement that when some of the other characters can appear a little cartoonish at times, he can steal a scene by doing nothing really. And when he does speak, his one-liners are fantastic. And I think he's a great foil for Sudeikis to have the 2 of them together. They have a lovely rapport. I love him. He's my favorite.
Yeah, there's like a good juxtaposition between Coach Beard, who is just so monotone, and then Ted Lasso, who is a cartoon technically.
Yes, yeah, I agreed. And then we have Nate, and Nate was the equipment manager of the team when Ted first got over there, and he was very much picked on by a lot of the players on the team, and Ted shut that down very quickly and really got to know Nate, and Nate eventually becomes the assistant coach of the team at the end of season 1. So a word on Nate, guys.
Honestly, for me, one of the most heartwarming storylines of the first season. I just love seeing this little guy like kind of find his like backbone and find his voice, and like, I don't know, man. I love seeing a brown dude like get his due. I love it. I really like, I'm an easy audience when it comes to that. So I do think it's really funny what they're doing with him in this second season.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that for sure.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that. But yeah, I don't know that. I think I like more the arc that he has. The actor's okay, but like the arc I thought it was really nice.
Yeah, for sure.
I think over here, I agree with everything you just said, TJ, but for Nick Mohammed is probably one of the better known people in it. to UK viewers. Yeah, he's. I mean, go. I mean, he's done. He pops up. He's one of those. Oh, it's that guy, but he's been in everything, and he's actually, he's more than that guy. People probably know him as Nick Mohammed now, but he's got such an extensive CV, particularly of comedy. So we see him over here. That's how. In crude terms, he's much more well known here than Jason Sudeikis is, I would say.
Wow.
Crazy.
Matt, I'm so fascinated to have your take, because we would have completely I didn't realize that, like, watching this as an American, you kind of one side the show, but like watching this as someone from the UK, that is fascinating to me. Well, so are like all the other characters, are they like famous people? Because I didn't know any of these actors.
Let's go through the list.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry,
I'll translate as we go.
Yeah, so let's go through the list. Okay, so next up, really important character, we have Jamie Tart, and Jamie is like the young, egotistical star of the team, and like he's your, like Rebecca said, he's your like hot captain of the team, and there's a storyline that goes that he's like pretty much an asshole to everybody who's on the team, and then eventually Ted makes the really tough decision to bench him at halftime of one of the games they're in. He eventually starts to warm up to Ted a little bit. We get some like humanization of the character, but then Rebecca, the owner of, basically steps in and ships him back to Manchester City at the time, where he plays, and then ends up, having a big in the finale of season 1 really has the result that relegates AFC Richmond to a lower level, because he decides to make a pass to a teammate, which Ted Lasso has been encouraging him to make throughout season 1. So it is an interesting character arc where, we, especially with him, because we get this scene right at the end of season 1 where we see him with his father who's berating him, and you start to get that like there's layers to this character. So Jamie is a really important and interesting character in this story. Anyone with a word on Jamie?
I hate him, but he's easy to look at. So I don't mind when he's on the screen, but like every time he opens his mouth, I like want to punch him. I don't know. I find him super unenjoyable.
Well, Matthew, give us the European version of Jamie.
The European version of Jamie, really well acted, and I see where Rebecca's coming from. He's really, he's easy on the eye. I get that, but for me, this is one of the strange things where the show is trying to blend a reality with a fiction. So the Richmond, the club, the club at the focus of the show is a fictitious club, but Manchester City isn't. Is a real club, and there's a scene in the beginning of I think it's season 2, episode 2 of season 2, where he goes on a talk show and he's interviewed by Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby. So they are two of the most recognisable people on British television. They're huge stars. That show is real. That's their set. And the sports show he goes on at the end, that's real. So it's that strange thing of the world. They're trying to sort of blur fiction and reality. I think he's a character that they are slightly struggling to flesh out, although it's more interesting because of the Love Island-esque show that he's gone on recently, and there's a bit more to him.
Yeah, so he goes on this show, we're going to talk about it, but in season 2, he goes on this reality show called Lust Conquers All, which is, I guess, a Love Island imitation. And you know what, Matthew, tell me if you agree and if you know who I'm talking about, but I really find that I get a lot of Stephen Bear vibes from Jamie. Do you know Stephen Bear?
So I do know who you mean, but I only came across that name when I was doing a bit of digging about this character in preparation for this.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. So it came up that way.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to see where that character goes. I think they're sort of trying to sort of push him in a different direction at the moment.
Yeah, so Stephen Bear is was on a lot of like British reality shows. Like I think he was on Big Brother UK. So he's like a very big deal. I believe he was also on The Challenge in the United States for a few seasons. So, but he's like a very controversial person, but I find that Jamie and Stephen Bear are a lot alike from what I know. Okay, and then we also get Roy Kent, and we spoke about Roy very briefly, and he's like the aging captain who's been on the team for a very long time, and he's probably not in his prime anymore, and then eventually throughout the season, he has this arc where he realizes and has to accept the fact that he can't play anymore, and that he eventually retires, and that's what we get into in season 2. But Rebecca mentioned it, our Rebecca, that he's just so lovable but so angry at the same time. And it's so funny because I even have people in my life who, when I'm like socializing and out, they're like, oh yeah, he's such a Roy Kent, because like they just like fully created this character of this person. And I've heard that over like even the last weekend, and I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to bring that up, that's a thing now. So anybody, a word on Roy Kent?
The same way TJ loves the representation of Nick Mohammed. I mean, Brett Goldstein just being a Jew, I love it. I'm Jewish in real life, but I wish that they portrayed it. Yeah, I wish they portrayed it on the show. When I was like just doing some research, I saw a name like Brett Goldstein. I was like, okay, and I looked it up. He was born to a British Jewish family, and I kind of wish that they threw that in. I think it might be just another interesting element, just from like a Jewish perspective of that. But just an interesting fact. But I really like his character, and they have a lot of character growth without losing who he is. Like, you see him warm up, and you see that he like has a warmer heart, but different than Rebecca's character growth, where now she's like kind of bubbly and like that. He's still Roy Kent, but you see he has a good heart also to him.
Yeah.
It's because he's here. He's there. He's every fucking way. He's Roy Kent. Oh, wait. I don't know if I could curse.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah, so yeah, that's Roy Kent, and then we have Keely, and Keely is originally Jamie's girlfriend. She's the model, and she is hanging out with Jamie throughout season 1, and then slowly becomes friends with Rebecca, the owner of the team, because she happens to be so close and near the team. And then Jamie, through all of his turmoil, they break up, like we mentioned, and she ends up dating Roy, which obviously Roy and Jamie had a lot of controversy and tension in the first half of the season. So that's a big storyline. Matthew, anything on Roy or Keely?
I mean, not so much on Roy, although I like Brett Goldstein as an actor, but I think Juno Temple, again, one of the better known names in this country, is so good in that part, which to me at first read like, oh, here we go, we've seen this character before. I think through sheer force of what she brings to how she fleshes out that character in reality, beyond the script, it's really come to life across season 1. And I suspect if you go back to something like Friends in its first season and how Phoebe was written originally before Lisa Kudrow took the part, and again, a sort of character that you think, I've seen this character before. When the writers knew what Lisa Kudrow could do with Phoebe, I think this is the same, that now they know how Juno Temple is approaching that character, she's becoming much more interesting. And I think she's she lights up the screen, I think, when she's on. I think she's great.
Yeah, she does. I would love to go out and take tequila shots with her. That's like the perfect way to describe her character.
She would be great to turn up with, like, real talk.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like Matt, I did the same thing where I wrote her off a little bit in the first couple of episodes, because as I'm actually watching this show in these first couple of, as I was watching the show on my first time trying it, I'm honestly kind of just trying to compare this all and see where can I see the Bill Lawrence and everything? Like, where do I see that? And so with Keely, I was like, I don't like, what is this? I really wrote her off. And then she kind of is endeared to Ted. And so I'm like, I guess this is this like a main cast person? Like, I don't know, but it was how nice she was to Rebecca. And like how like she was very like, everyone's so good at getting other people's guards down in this show, but like she was really able to get like through like Rebecca's like walls through sheer force, as you mentioned Juno Temple does with the performance. And I think it's like, because of the character that she was presented as first, it is so easy to think like, all right, they're going to do this, and like we're predicting the beats, and that's the type of character. So when she breaks up with Jamie in the middle of the season, I'm like, okay, so this isn't going to be like a they're not going to have her kind of just stay in the same stupid scenario the entire time. And so I was like, oh, she's great, and she's amazing. Like she's fantastic. You're right. I think it was the character more than the performance, honestly.
The moment for me was where she and Rebecca, I know we keep saying our Rebecca to distinguish from their Rebecca, but I'm now talking about their Rebecca, where she and Hannah Waddingham are in the back of, is it the carriage at the very end of an episode in season 1, and they sort of drunkenly lean on each other and laugh. And I thought that was the moment where I went, yes, I want to see more of these people and these actors taking these characters on and doing something interesting with them.
It was so sweet. It was so, yo, this show got me in my feelings, like real talk, like made a thug cry. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so those are really our main characters. I mean, there's a couple other people who are important, for, important secondary characters. We have Sam, who's one of the players on the team. He is Nigerian, and he's really like heartwarming, just like the nicest guy on the team. And he ends up, being there also in season 2. We have Danny Rojas, who comes partway through season 1, and football is life.
Danny Rojas, I love him so much.
Yeah, he's a great character. And he ends up being like, part of the reason that there ends up being problems with Jamie in the first season is because Danny Rojas is just as good as Jamie. So we get to see that throughout season 1. We also have Higgins, who is Rebecca's, I think, assistant. They end up calling him the general manager at the team at some point. Not really clear what his role is, but he becomes very close with Ted and ends up being a big reason, why Rebecca ends up, warming up to Ted. And we end up having Ted and Beard and Nate and Higgins, and they become what they called the Diamond Dogs, where they just, hang out and talk about stuff every single day. And that's like a really great part of the show. That's like, Matthew made the Friends comparison. When the Diamond Dogs get together in Ted's office, that's like the central perk of Ted Lasso, when they're all just like sitting around talking about the game. So there are some really wonderful characters in this show.
Can I just add 2 quick local colour points? Anthony Head, who plays Rupert, the club owner, the awful excellent. You would probably know him most from Buffy, the Vampire Slayer. So he's a huge star. Certainly, he was one of the main cast of Buffy for the whole thing. But also, just in the way that the show is quite meta in its dealing with reality, that the host of, I've forgotten the name of it, but the Love Island-esque show that Jamie goes on, the host of that is played by Fleur East. Again, one of a really recognisable face over here, because she was on the UK's X Factor, where she was one of the most popular breakout stars. She had her own proper pop chart career. She's still on radio and TV now. So I suppose it does land quite differently over here to go, oh, there's Anthony Head. Oh, there's Fleur East.
That's fascinating that you guys get like so many like cameos. Could I make John, there was something you mentioned about the central perk thing that kind of reminded me of something that I kept coming back to as I was watching the show. So again, coming back to like the Bill Lawrence of everything, I was a really big fan of Cougar Town. That's a whole other thing. I was a big fan of Cougar Town. It was the Courtney Cox show that Bill Lawrence and Courtney Cox like developed the show a little bit during his time working on Scrubs. And it started as this whole thing of like this woman is going to try dating in her 40s. And they realized quickly after like, I want to say less than 6 episodes. Yeah, this is a terrible idea. And we instead have a great cast. Courtney Cox is amazing with ensemble cast. Let's do 6 seasons of people just being friends and drinking wine. And it is one of the most underrated comedies like that is out there. So there are like 2 things in this show that like I know aren't on purpose, but like I can't help but think of Cougar Town immediately when I watch it. And it's the Diamond Dogs. So in Cougar Town, they very quickly always had like meetings together and like they were like friends. And so they always had these kind of like meetings and discussions. And the Diamond Dogs, as well as when Ted walks into the room in season 2 and everyone says, Ted, I know that's kind of a Cheers-esque thing, but it's also the energy of that is very reminiscent of the energy and chemistry that cast had on that show, as well as some of the music cues. It's very light. And I tried to look up, all right, were any of composers here people who worked on previous Bill Lawrence projects? And there were a couple like Tom Howe, and there was another guy, something Gregson something, but none of them had worked on Cougar Town and Ted Lasso. But there's tiny notes of stuff like music things here that reminded me a lot of like when I used to watch that show. So this is like it's more. I don't know if anyone else is going to care about this. I just thought there's a little bit of DNA in there of the way that Bill Lawrence does a show that I saw from like that and Scrubs that was in here that I also like picked up on. It has Cougar Town energy.
Yeah, no, I think people care, and thank you for bringing that stuff to the table. I think it's interesting. So, but let's talk about the 2 episodes from season 2. I know a lot of people watch these episodes in order to catch up for our podcast, or maybe they just watch them and happen to find it. So let's talk about what happens in season 2. We ended season 1 with AFC Richmond becoming relegated, and it ends on a heartwarming note that even though they lost, they're going to try and be promoted next year back to the main league and eventually win the Premier League. So we start off in season 2 that they're actually already in the middle of the season, and I just assumed that it would be the start of the season again, but it was really in the middle of the season. And Richmond has been in 7 ties in a row, which, Matthew, I have to tell you, as an American sports fan, a game ending in a tie is very weird. So I know that it can happen in the NFL sometimes, but Americans hate ties.
Oh, wow. I mean, as I said earlier, my sports knowledge is much shakier than my TV comedy knowledge. But it happens over here. But then in big tournaments, like we just had the Euros over here, and where obviously Britain got to the final, we'd not been in an international. England. Or the people get really cross with me from Scotland for saying that. But England got to the final of the Euros. We'd not been in an international final since 1966 when we won the World Cup. But on those tournaments, you can't go to a tie at that level. You then go to extra time and to penalties. So I would have to speak to sports people I knew, but I don't think ties are popular over here either.
Okay.
I'm so happy you mentioned that, John, because a couple of weeks ago, I went to a Seattle Sounders game, which is the Seattle soccer team. And I've never really been into soccer before. And I was like really invested, getting excited. And then the game ended and it was a tie. And I was so pissed. I was like, does this usually happen? Like, I was so frustrated. So I'm now watching Ted Lasso where they are like 6 or 7 ties, or I'm making those numbers up. I have no clue, but a lot of ties in a row. I was like, I would be so frustrated if I were them.
Yeah, it's crazy. Anyways, that's a whole thing. But like, there should never be ties in any sport. But anyways, moving on. So, they've been a bunch of draws or ties, and basically they're in the game, and Danny Rojas has a penalty shot to win the game. And football is life becomes football is death, because the team mascot, Earl Greyhound, actually chases a bird in front of the soccer net, and we don't see it on screen, but Danny Rojas basically kills the team mascot, Earl Greyhound, by kicking a soccer ball. And I literally had the moment, this is the start of season 2, and I was like, what the hell is happening on this show? I was like, it's so weird. Anybody, TJ, go ahead. Yeah.
The nerve of them to introduce a dog for it to be immediately killed within a minute of screen time. The gall of this show.
Right. Yeah. It was very, very crazy. And as Ted said, 2 buttons he doesn't press are panic and snooze. So he just moves right along and gets ready. But Danny Rojas is really rattled for the first episode, and we eventually will see this new character come in, this therapist. But let's, set the scene for what's happening throughout season 1. And we have, Ted basically says, back home, if a team keeps losing, we don't call them unlucky, we call them the New York Jets, which I just wanted to point out for all the American listeners. Very funny line. But yeah, so really they're trying to figure out what's going to happen with the team, how to make the team better. That's really a continuation of the story. And we have some new characters that are introduced. We have Will, who is our new equipment manager, and he's the foil for Nate. So any thoughts on Will, who is just messing up with the towels and everything? A really funny new character.
Lavender Will, unacceptable. Lavender. Oh, Nate needs to stay on him. His mother is not even on the team. His mom, the nerve of that man. How dare he? Oh, I'm disgusted. Nate is out of pocket. He needs to chill.
No, there's like making Will Nate's punching bag. I wonder if they're gonna get more into it. It seems so unnecessary. But he like takes a sip of his water and so dramatically just spits it out. He's like, "This tastes like pineapple." Will's just like trying his best and trying to like, making fruit infused water and like put lavender in the wash tub. And it just seems like I'm really curious if they're going to do this because, like, to me, it seems really unnecessary to have Nate like have this weird turn where he's still Nate and he's still really kind, nice guy. And anytime Will comes by, he's like, Will.
Yeah, it's a very, very weird turn for this character. Look, guys, I'm just going to go through the episodes. Jump in where you see fit with anything that you want to talk about. So we basically have, that's kind of setting up what's happening at the team. We do get to see Roy Kent, who is now retired. We learn that he had this very emotional retirement speech that he made where he was crying, and he's now coaching.
John,
Yeah.
one person in particular really loved that speech. I mean,
Yeah.
we can say that. There was somebody who loved that speech.
You're telling me. We'll talk about that in episode 2. So before we get there, Roy Kent is now coaching young girls and doing yoga and watching watching Lust Conquers All. So he's really enjoying his retirement, Matthew. Do you have any thoughts on Roy's new lifestyle?
Well, it takes an unusual swing in episode 2, or it goes in a different direction. So I think I was expecting, but I enjoyed seeing that character move beyond their sort of slightly clenched interior that we'd seen through a lot of season 1, and then there is obviously he's still a character who is a bit glass half empty, I suppose, in essence, but definitely moving in a new direction into season 2. I'm really interested to see where that's going to go.
Yeah,
I'm invested enough to keep watching for that.
For sure. He ends up being such an important character so far in season 2, so I'm interested to see his arc in this season. We start talking about Rebecca's storyline, and Rebecca is now ready for love, I guess, ready to meet somebody new, and she's seeing a guy named John Wingsnight, and they go on a double date with Roy and Keely, and
down
John,
at PJ Flats.
Yeah, you know what? And there's this very weird story that John Wingsnight tells at dinner where he starts talking about how he wants to beat Martin Short up or something like that because they couldn't find. Tell me if I'm getting this wrong. They couldn't find Martin Short's wallet, and then it ends up being in a couch cushion. Like, what the hell was going on with this?
I have no clue. They keep just like this season, like the fact that they made his last name Wingsnight for the one joke, like killed me. And I'm like, this whole story, like he said 2 like pretty bizarre stories, and I was like, oh God, this guy's gonna really get on my nerves. And then you actually end up seeing at the end of episode 2 that like he won't be in the picture any longer. So it was just a really interesting choice of a character for sure.
Yeah, and I think that episode 1, basically, with Rebecca's storyline is she talks to Keely, she has her girl talk, she talks to Ted about this, and Ted says rule number 1, even though it's girl talk, sometimes it needs to be more like girl listen. So they sit down and he starts giving her advice, but it's really actually Roy who gives advice to Rebecca and says, don't settle. You're totally worth not settling. And so Rebecca ends up breaking up with John Wingsnight in episode 1. And Roy says, "Don't you dare settle for fine." That's really the line that's there. And then, so that's kind of our side stories. But this is the main story that we start seeing, and I think will be the main story throughout the entirety of season 2. Is there's a new character that comes into play that we mentioned earlier. This is Dr. Sharon Fieldstone, and she's a therapist that is brought in that's going to be looking after Danny Rojas and helping him with moving back from. He's football is death, and he needs to go back to football is life. So this is going to be an interesting character as we start talking about her, and she starts talking about the yips in episode 1. So thoughts on Sharon Fieldstone?
I have a theory about Sharon Fieldstone. My Sharon Fieldstone theory, I call it. I don't think we're meant to warm to this character initially. I don't like her, and that's fine because I think because Ted is such a lovely guy, a good-natured guy, a force of positivity, that any clash that there might have meant to be with Rebecca in season 1 didn't materialize as things went. And to generate some sort of tension there, I think this character has been brought in and conceived to be an antagonist towards him because of the different methodology she's going to use. Sarah Niles is a fantastic actor who plays her, and it's really subtle. Although that scene that scene really annoyed me, where she turns up on her bike outside the training ground because they've stuck clearly what looks like a really fake entrance just to the outside of a building. I thought, she's not going to walk through that door, and she didn't. But other than that, I think that's why she is there. I think it'll be interesting to see how she plays it, because it feels a little contrived at the moment.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my brain. I was actually thinking the same thing, that since now Rebecca and Ted are having girl talk and they're friends now, that you kind of need that person to go against Ted in that aspect, and that's Sharon. But I'm actually really happy that they mentioned this part of sports and the fact that they are now keeping on a therapist for the team, and you're seeing that they go in and talk to her and they're all like cured the second they leave. But it's super interesting that that's coming out now with all the Olympic stuff with Simone Biles specifically, and just talking about how the mental health of an athlete in general is just so important and just really not discussed enough. And it's just such honestly perfect timing that they already had these episodes in what's going on right now in the current world. So I hope that there is a lot of development with Sharon and the characters itself to kind of shine a light on the fact that these pro athletes are just training day in, day out. They're public figures. They go through a lot. And just to see that mental health is so important to them, and having a psychologist, I think that that's a really interesting character to come in. And I'm happy that they're talking about that.
Yeah, you know what I think is great about Sharon is that for me, it's Danny Rojas needing to go to therapy because of the dog situation is really just obviously a crutch to bring her into the show. Like, it's just an excuse to have her be there. But really, it's about Ted's relationship with Sharon that I think we're going to see throughout season 2. And I think what's interesting is basically you see all through season 1, Ted is there to help all of these people. And he is like almost like the team therapist as he is the team coach. And you end up seeing a little bit of jealousy from Ted as she starts helping some of the teammates. And she's like, well, do we really need her? Because that's kind of my job. My job is to get into the psychology of some of these players. And now she's taking that away from me. And I think that we're going to see this interesting contrast where Ted actually really needs to speak to somebody about the things that he's going through, and Sharon's going to end up being that person. And I think what we're going to see too is that Ted may end up being the therapist as he starts to break through with Sharon as well. So I wonder if the relationship is starting antagonistic and ends up being like mutually beneficial for both of them.
I hate to be a bit of a cynic here, but yeah, that's of course is going to happen. They're going to get along by the end of the season, and that's what annoys me. Is I'm kind of like, I know this characters, they're going to get along. Like, I know that. I need you to. Mike Schur in The Good Place was amazing at doing this in writing television, because he would write 5 series finales in one season of television. He would subvert your expectations and get around your like, all right, I know what's about to happen. I need something more than them to like get along. I know it works, and I know we're supposed to. That poor dog being written just so Danny could go to therapy, just so this character come in. Granted, it's good to have another woman, especially like like another like person of color in the show. That's dope. But like I'm gonna pivot here just a teeny bit and also add to what you said, John. He's the other reason she doesn't like him, and I didn't catch this until my second viewing. The only reason he doesn't like her is because he mentions this a couple of times, that he doesn't trust therapists. And he mentions that story about what his wife did about bringing him into meet with his wife's current therapist. Terrible idea to do couples therapy. And he felt like he was being ganged up on. And that's why he talks about a modern Midwestern skepticism towards therapists, which I thought was also just a really funny line. But like, that's an additional reason as to why we're seeing him just like, he doesn't trust this person, as well as this person is so good that they're kind of taking the thing that he's good at. So it kind of like, nothing he's doing. Like when she says in that second episode, when she just like clocks him, like, oh, so this is what you do. It's very disarming. It's like, bro, you just got caught in 4K Ultra HD 1080p. Like, she got him. That's what happened. Oh,
I would pick up on what TJ's saying. I think, and I'm training to be a therapist at the moment, so I really like that moment in season 2 when episode 2 when they're talking about therapy, and the Rebecca character says, why would I need therapy? That's what you have friends for. And I just want to give a quick shout out because I think we might be in danger of just not saying how good Hannah Waddingham is as Rebecca. I know she's been nominated for an Emmy, but so in Britain, she's second billed in the cast, but she's a treasure of the British musical theatre stage. She's mostly known as a stage performer. She'd be like, I don't know, our Idina Menzel or Kristen Chenoweth over here. I've seen her in so many things. She's got such comic chops. I think she's fantastic in this.
Is every actor in this show just a major UK star? I pride myself on knowing actors. I'm really good at it, but of course I don't know it if, I may not be as good as with like Australia and the UK. So all these actors are just, you keep mentioning like, oh, this person, they're friends with the Queen. Like all these people are just that famous.
We're all personal friends with the Queen, I think. But I would say that the thing about Hannah Waddingham's an interesting one on that sense, because I think she's mostly known as a stage performer. She's a stage actor. I've seen her in countless musicals. I don't know if you've heard of the Monty Python musical Spamalot. That was on Broadway. Yeah. Well, and that came to the UK with Tim Curry in the lead. Still, she played the lead. She was the lead. She was the lead in that. She's a big theatre name. But this, to be second billed in this, I mean, I think it's. I don't want to sound patronising, but this is like amazing for her career, and to be recognised for it. I'm so glad that people get to see how wonderful Hannah Waddingham is. But yeah, we're all friends with the Queen. That's where I am now. I'm in Buckingham Palace. Can't you see?
Yes, of course.
She's fantastic. She also,
Matthew, you have to get the Queen on a podcast with us.
Sure, she'll do it. Man. She's asleep now, but
wake her up.
Yeah. Also, I did want to add in. This is just more of a stray thought, which I have a section of notes called "Stray Thoughts." I feel like, and this is so
that should be the name of your podcast, by the way.
I do have a podcast I'm working on called Rabbit Trail, which is kind of the same chaotic nature. Anyways, this is so random. Mainly because she's such maybe it's because she's just really tall and seems really powerful. Wouldn't she be amazing as one of those women in Wonder Woman? Is that just me? Okay, that's probably just me. She could be great as Robin Wright's character. I know it's so random, but I thought Amazon when I saw her. I was like, this is represents one of those powerful women from the Wonder Woman movies.
I'd be so scared of her if I met her in person. I would be so intimidated. She has that energy for sure because she's just so composed. Even her character in that self, and I just think I'm glad she's getting the recognition she deserves and with the Emmy nomination.
So we finish off episode 1 by, seeing that we get our first glimpse at Jamie in season 2, that he is, like we said, on this Love Island style show called Less Conquers All. And he continues into episode 2 where Jamie is removed from the show. Jamie, the lust stops here. And then, as Matthew said, Jamie is on this morning show with Philip and Holly. And Matthew, you said, so is this an actual show or this was a contrived show for Ted Lasso?
No, it's entirely real. It's on every weekday morning. It's what you'd watch when you were ill from school, when you were homesick from school.
Okay, so this is like the Live with Regis and Kelly of...
Well, I was going to say, I was trying to think, I would say Regis and Kathy Lee, and I know that's not there anymore, or Kathy and Hoda Kotb doing the end of the Today Show type thing. It's a fixture of UK TV. It's a big deal. They are both very, very recognisable TV stars. So they're obviously playing themselves, doing a slight wink to camera. But they would be head and shoulders the most recognisable people in all of season 1 and 2 so far to most people in Britain.
Everyone is everyone you've said is supposed to be recognizable. Who is the most famous? Just is everybody I didn't know Arlo White was a real person until I watched that old sketch from 2013. I thought he was just a character.
I knew.
Oh my God! I guess I'm just ugly.
Philip and Holly are, they are. That show is very, very popular. And last year, just before the pandemic, Philip Schofield, announced on air he was married. He'd been married to his wife for quite some time, with grown-up daughters, that he was gay. And Holly was incredibly supportive, visibly on air. They're very, very close off air as well. So it's a very well liked, and it's a public double. It's a TV double act, Philip and Holly, and so when they pop up, you go, "All right, it's those guys."
Yeah, that's really cool. Actually, I knew also TJ. I knew Arlo White because Arlo White is a big Cubs fan, so that's why I would have known. He sung the seventh inning stretch at the Cubs games a lot. So he came into the American culture a little bit. So season 2, Jamie's on this morning with Philip and Holly, and he says he's going to go back to Manchester City, and then little did he know that they don't want him back anymore. So he doesn't know what to do. He ends up meeting Ted at a bar and asking Ted for a spot back on the team, which Ted declines. Did anybody think that Ted was going to say yes to having him back right away?
No. I didn't think so. I thought that would be too easy.
I was worried Ted would be too nice, and because he was going to think about that moment Jamie had with his dad, and I thought he was going to take pity on him, which is why I am upset about the end of that episode. That he went back on Sam after such an emotional moment with Sam, where Sam says, what did he say? He said, I love Sam, but the moment where he says, I've never felt as bad about myself as the way that I did when Jamie would make fun of me. I'm not quoting, that's not exact, but that's kind of the sentiment that was there. And I don't know any person, unless you're heartless, like The Weeknd and that song from a couple of years ago, who could hear that and be like, we should put this guy back on the team. I know they're going to get into that, and also it makes for good drama because it's a 12-episode season. So I know it's TV, but the nerve, Sam, I can't.
Yeah. So we're gonna talk about that. What happens? Sorry, Rebecca. Did you want to comment on that?
Oh, I was just gonna bring up to Matthew's point earlier, like in the beginning, that Ted doesn't really have conflict, but he has a way about going about things, even when he's turning Jamie down initially. The way he talks, it's really interesting writing that is so positive. He's so up and high spirits always. So even when he's saying no to Jamie, it's I was like, oh, he's probably going to say yes just by the way that he's speaking. And then he turns around and says no. But I'm really interested to see what's going to happen, if there's going to be more conflicts between the team and Ted or the team and Jamie, and seeing which direction that they're going to take it in, because they really could do it either way.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting to see what happens there. So he basically says no. There are some people at the bar who end up taking photos of them together, and it turns into this thing where some members of the team think he's coming back, and they get upset with Ted. And we'll talk about that at the end of the episode. But another Ted storyline is Ted comes in and finds out that Dr. Sharon has been hired for the rest of the season by Higgins. He decides, okay, it's a big surprise. And then Ted ends up saying, okay, I'm going to make sure to win over Dr. Sharon, or as he says, Doc. And he walks in and tries to give her some shortbread and starts sitting down and talking to her. And Sharon clocks him right away and says, oh, this is your way of meeting new people. You give them something, you try and disarm them, you ask them questions about themselves. And she has Ted all figured out and basically says, I don't need sugar. And it's really, there is some tension building there, guys.
As someone who and I hope I don't sound egotistical when I say this, but I know that one of my stronger points of myself is my charisma. Doesn't work all the time. I'm very aware of that. But I do know that I don't know, if I crack a joke or give someone a compliment, the reason I call myself King Compliment is because I have a big words of affirmation, love language kind of person. So I really love being encouraging verbally, and I like
Me too.
being encouraged. Yeah. You've earned your compliments though, John. No, Jesus Christ, let me stop. I'm so sorry. No, that's the reason I call myself King Compliment on my socials and whatnot. There's something about, but I'm also an extra. I love being around people. I'm recharged and rejuvenated by engaging with people. There is something about like being a really social person and kind of like very charismatic, about when someone does kind of like because a lot of times you don't even really notice you're doing it. Like I notice that I'm being kind of like a little like extra after the fact, and I'm like, oh god, was that like too much? Like, was I being just like on? But like in the moment, for someone to kind of like stop you and be like, oh, so this is what you do, I would be so embarrassed because I do have this desire because I don't like having like beef with people. I mean, unless it's a delicious steak and we're sharing a meal.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Yeah,
Stop.
no, what I mean is I'm so sorry. I don't really like having conflict with people. So like that moment rung is really true for me as someone who does try to win over people with jokes or like, compliments. Like I use compliments to disarm when I introduce myself. So to have that person, I know exactly what that like energy stop like Ted is feeling is, because it can stop you in your tracks, because you can you think like, all right, like what do I do here? And it becomes a strategy rather than you being natural, and that's where you lose in like authenticity.
Well, I agree with you. Actually, like I remember having this conversation with my girlfriend over the last 2 years, where she was like, "How do you make friends like now? Like when you're kids and stuff, like you do activities together, like you socialize and different things. But like when you're an older person, like it's so much harder to make friends because like you have your stuff, you see your people, and like what do you do?" And I was like, "Well, if you see somebody you want to be friends with, just ask them questions. Like people love to talk about themselves. So if you make them feel that they like that you care about what they have to say, that's how you become friends with people." And we like had that discussion a lot. So we like joked around sometimes of like being in like an Uber or something, and then it's like, oh, if you want to like get along with the Uber driver, like ask him about his life, like type of thing. So I see that like that's easily put in sitcoms basically as a tool for people to build relationships with each other, is to ask each other questions. So I can relate to that.
I also think Ted is, like, has a wall up, and he gets around that by never actually talking about himself. Like he sits down with everyone and says, "How are you? Tell me this." And any of his personal anecdotes are kind of surface level in terms of like the dog that he had and took care of. Like you never really find out that much about how he's feeling in the moment, and that's why I think having Dr. Sharon there is going to be super interesting to see. Maybe we'll see more into Ted because that is his way. Is he goes in and asks how she is because he doesn't want to talk about himself.
Right. So yeah, before we get to what happens at the end of the episode, there's this other storyline that we've been talking about, which is that Roy is retired now, and he is trying to figure out what to do. And one of the local stations, Sky Sports, wants him to come work there, and he doesn't want to do it. But Keely really says, you love this, it's your passion, like you should be talking about the show. And he says no, and he ends up coming home to Keely's place and walking in on Keely, who is watching a video of his press conference when he was retiring, with him being very vulnerable. And that is a big kink for her. It's very attractive for her that, she gets to watch him be vulnerable, which she never gets to see. And there's this really interesting scene where Roy and Keely are talking about this situation. And yeah, I just found this whole thing fascinating because eventually it turns into Roy deciding to go work for Sky Sports. Not before he says that his kink is watching people do it in the forest.
I thought when he looked at her phone to see what she was watching, I thought it was going to be Jamie.
Oh my God, me too. Me too.
And I was like, oh no, this is going to be bad.
I think the subversion of expectation there, I completely agree. But this is why I think this series is bedding in and getting a bit grittier. I mean, I can't think of another mainstream. I can't think of much where when he walks in, I know what. There isn't much depiction of that sort of thing in any media, and it's not played for laughs either. It's actually then sort of explored with a degree of some sensitivity and why she's watching it and what it means about their relationship and the dynamic between them. And it goes somewhere really, quite touching but funny but rude.
No pun intended.
Scenes. And I really like the way those two actors have negotiated that territory. I think it was really unexpected for that to happen, and it's played with real finesse, and it's so nicely done.
Yeah, for sure. TJ.
Played with is a very interesting choice of words to use here, Matt.
I'll pretend it was deliberate.
I love the way we're dancing around the topic because this is apparently a family show. Look, she was having a great time. Honestly, you know what's crazy is my first thought was like, "Oh, that's really sweet." I thought it was really sweet. Little dark.
I mean, it is sweet.
Yeah, it is sweet.
Yeah.
My first thought was, you don't see it. You just don't see that on a family sitcom, family show. Mainstream media.
We keep calling it a family sitcom, but there's like a ton of cursing in the first season, but there was nothing.
Yeah, but TJ, people only say cuss words when they don't know the right words to express themselves.
Okay, you know what?
I would also point out a difference here with British TV and US TV, and I know it's on Apple TV, but you can swear on British TV in a way that I know that you can't on even network American television.
Oh, okay.
So if Ted Lasso were on network TV, it wouldn't be censored or changed. It might go out at 9 p.m., but that would be the only distinction. That language, that content would remain intact. Yeah.
Really? Wait. So can you say the F word, John?
After 9 p.m.
Oh, like South Park.
You can in the U.S. Yeah, like on their shows. I think it's just the timing.
Cable over there.
Yeah.
Yes, but there was
network UK like NBC, ABC.
Okay. Got you.
Like, because I know SNL, they can't swear really, even though it's going out late night. But after 9 p.m., which we call it the TV watershed, Ted Lasso could go out at 9 p.m. unchanged, unedited, uncensored on UK network TV.
Interesting. All right, so we learned a lot about Keely's interests, and then we get to Roy end up going to work for Sky Sports, and he goes on and he tells the truth about what he's seeing in the soccer games or the European football games, and people love him. Twitter is blowing up. Every account, including the Twitter account for Ted's mustache, is going nuts about.
That's real, by the way. It's a real account.
Is it a real account?
Yeah, I looked it up because I was like, "Is this just a throwaway line?" And it's a real account. It's a real Twitter.
The bio of that real account is the quote, is the line from the show, isn't it? Like, someone's probably made an account on Twitter about this, is what he says in the show. That's the bio. This is how meta it gets on the new Twitter account.
But that had to have been done recently because the Twitter was made in July of 2020.
Yeah, last week.
Yeah. So go ahead, TJ. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, we can come back to it. I was gonna mention my little anecdote about mustaches, but we can come back to it.
No, do it now. No, it's good now. Yeah.
Speaking of mustaches, ladies and gentlemen, and listeners, Ted Lasso is a great man and great people. Sorry, is a great man and he's a great man with a great mustache, and he believes to be inducted into the Hall of Fame of great TV mustaches, which includes several names as Ned Flanders, Bob from Bob's Burgers, Ron Swanson, every character ever that Tom Selleck has played. I don't know if that's true. I'm just assuming because that guy's an amazing stash. Yosemite Sam, apparently number 2 on the list. Didn't end apparently, according to BuzzFeed. Hulk Hogan. Who knew? And Carl Winslow from Family Matters. So just Ted Lasso's now on that same list of people with great mustaches, just great TV stashes.
Sam Elliott's not on that.
Oh, that's a good one. I picked like some random like names that I like saw that I thought of, and I have a big. You guys can see it, but I have a giant from Parks and Rec, the Swanson Merit of Greatness poster. I have it right above my my desk, and so that's what made me think of that.
That's great. So thank you for that. So basically we go from mustaches to mustache rides as Roy comes home and
you did not just
as Monette, who I know listens to all our podcasts, is gonna give me some
no, you didn't.
So Roy comes home and basically Keely asks, Roy says, like, how do you feel about everything? And he says, you know what, he says, yeah, it was really great. And I think he's finally happy, and they celebrate. So that's the Roy and Keely storyline, and we head back to Ted, who, like we said, is really still trying to like build this relationship with Dr. Sharon, and he's watching practice, and the doctor's watching practice, and really as he's watching, Sam gets very upset, one of the soccer players, because he thinks that Jamie's going to be joining the team. He goes off, he's upset. Ted says, "Don't worry about it. It was never a question. He wasn't going to join the team." Flash forward to the end of the episode, Jamie walks on to practice and joins the team, and that is our cliffhanger at the end of episode 2. So let's talk through this. Let's talk through where we're going to see the season go, because now Jamie has rejoined the team, apparently. And I'll throw this in just because it fits really well. We had a question from one of our listeners, Leia Orlando, says, did Ted lie to Sam? Should he have talked to the team first before this happened? So let's go around the round table. Let's see what our thoughts are on this end of the episode. Matthew, let me start with you.
I mean, the first thing I noticed about the end of the episode is the snow. I was like, oh, that's interesting. We don't get much snow over here. I wonder if that was real. But that was my first thought. It's great that they've brought Jamie, by one route or another, that by having Jamie back on the team makes the show have more dramatic possibilities. There is more that they are able to do now. And this is, again, the crossovers of reality and fiction. Like Sky Sports is a real channel. Manchester City is a huge, I'm down the road from their ground. They're a huge, huge club team. So to have him come back to Richmond from Manchester, there's a whole status and power thing, and we've got that insight into who he is with his agent. I think that they had to bring him back, and I'm glad he's back. For the rest of the season, I would like to see Apple TV give the show more money to improve on the quality of production design for some of their sets, because that set for the changing room and the boardroom, I think, looks really cheap. But I'm glad that Jamie's back. I think it's a good move.
Rebecca, what about you? What do you think about this cliffhanger that we ended on?
I'm kind of annoyed that he was, I don't really like Jamie. And I was kind of happy in the first episode of this season. I kind of forgot about him. I was like, oh, this is enjoyable. And then they bring him on, and I'm just curious where they're going to go, because they saw what it was like when he was on the team initially. And like, you see that he went to another team and he's still the same guy, and he's on a reality show, still the same guy. So I'm really curious, like, how all of a sudden, like, he's going to change, because if you really think about it, since it's like now a tier down, like the Richmond team, he's only on it because he had nowhere else to be. He doesn't actually want to come back. He doesn't actually care or have any like amends. He would have taken any better offer if he got the chance. So I'm just kind of annoyed, and I'm curious what's going to happen. In terms of Ted talking before, I mean, I'm curious because, like, you see when, like, he goes out there, Keely and Rebecca have, like, these smirks on their face, and they're, like, happy about it, maybe because it's going to be a win. But if I don't see character development in any aspect, then, like, or Ted just not giving in to him, which, like, he always seems to do, besides when he benched him, like, I'm really curious how he's going to grow, because they haven't made no effort into helping him grow at all on the show so far.
For sure. TJ, like, my assumption is that we're going to start episode 3 with, Jamie's going to be riding the bench or something like that. It's not going to be just he's going to go back to being the star of the team.
I honestly, I'm not sure, because I think the thing is, this is the problem with watching too much television, is that, like, Matt was saying, he brought in, like, they clearly, this season is supposed to be 12 episodes. That's a lot of television for nowadays, especially when people do a lot of condensed stories in 6 to 8 episodes. So there's going to be some filler in there, maybe even a special episode or something. So it's like, all right, yeah, bring Jamie in. Of course, you're going to get more plot line, going to create, like, difficulty with Sam. That's fine. Rebecca, I'm going to agree and disagree with you at the same time. I agree that if there's no character development, what the ham sandwich is the point of, like, doing this? But I'm also going to disagree and said that, like, he did have growth in or not growth, but, like, you learn that Jamie isn't, like, not everything hits a wall. There is stuff that, like, gets in there, that, like, it's not just, like, in one ear and out the other. He still will do the same thing. But, like, when we learn that, like, he has that, the father is the reason he kind of continues to act like this, even though he does hear people's, like, feedback. We'll probably get a dramatic thing with the dad. That might be kind of nice. Maybe like Ted confronts the dad. I would love to see Ted punch somebody. I just can we get that? I don't know, but like no, I just the Jamie thing. It's intentionally there to stir up drama, and where it's doing the thing that it's supposed to do, which is like kind of like irritate the viewer. We're supposed to react poorly to him. That's what it's supposed to do. So I want to be subverted, but I know every show can't do that. So I'm gonna watch patiently.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where this goes. Let's do another question from the listener. We'll get this one in. This is from Richard. Richard says, do you guys think Jason will host SNL next season due to the popularity of Ted Lasso? So I guess panel, what do you guys think? Rebecca, you think he's going to host?
Yeah, I think so. It's a really good opportunity for him to go back, for them to get a reliable host, and also just in general, I think it's great press. So yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah,
it would make a lot of sense for like him or Cecily to open the season. They had these books. Mm-hmm.
So I was just going to say, I just did a quick head count. And if SNL comes back late September, early October, as it usually does around that time, this would be when season 2 Ted Lasso's finishing.
Good call.
Wouldn't that be around Emmy season? Wouldn't that be around Emmy season as well? I don't know when the Emmys are, but since it was announced as a nominee, which Ted Lasso got over or at least 20 nominations. Press wise, it makes sense. You have an alumni, it'd be a great show. He's actively it's a lineup. I don't know who the musical guest would be, but it's a lineup to have Jason do the season opener. But you don't know if he will, because we thought the same thing, maybe towards the end of last season. But he's not done with the show, because didn't he do the at home thing? He decided to do the Running Man for the SNL at home. So we know he'll still do stuff for the show. But and he's probably not in London anymore, because he's probably not shooting.
I think he's living in New York. So actually, I think it would be pretty easy for him to go over there. I honestly believe he will host. I'd be very surprised if he didn't. You asked for musical guest. Gin Blossoms was mentioned in this episode, so that kind of makes they were referenced in this particular episode.
Who that?
A 90s band.
My God.
Yeah, just messing around. Okay, yeah, that really sums up our first 2 episodes. There was a couple lines in here which I just thought were really funny. I would just bring up. They were saying, I forget where this came up. Old people are so wise; they're like tall Yodas. I thought that was great. And then Ted Danson is the male version of Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who is the female version of Dave Grohl, and they that was a huge tangent. So
that was great.
Yeah, that was very good. So that is Ted Lasso season 2, episodes 1 and episode 2. That's our talk and discussion about them. I believe that the plan for our Ted Lasso coverage is we're going to check in later in the season. We'll let you guys know what the dates are of that. We'll probably do, one check-in in the midway point, and then at the end of the season, come back and, summarize exactly everything that's going to be happening there. Before I give our listeners the plugs for everything that's coming up on SNL Stats, let's go around the round table and do some plugs of our own. So TJ, thank you for joining us. Where can people reach out to you, and what have you been up to?
I was just trying to find my plugs. So I'm currently working on producing 2 podcasts, and I'm hoping to release both of them by the end of the year. But I was working on this one, but I kind of had a bit of a pause, but I'm back working on it with the team. So if you would like updates on things that I currently work on, you can follow me at King Compliment on Instagram and TikTok. And I also occasionally do little skits. And I have an old podcast called the Team Trashcast that you can also follow at Team Trashcast on Instagram and TikTok for updates of things that I'm going to be doing in the future.
Yeah, and TJ, we have to get you on Twitter. So
it is
to come up.
It is. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. I thought about it for you guys, but no, it is a no-go. I talk too much as it is. I'm happy to talk to people on Instagram. Happy to.
I don't know. Ted says that there is a Twitter account for everything now, so we'll see.
I can't. Oh my God.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, TJ. Rebecca, always great to hear from you and your thoughts on everything pop culture. Where can people reach out to you?
We're at Barbecue everywhere on all social medias, and then I'm also gonna get the handle on Twitter, King Compliment, and then make TJ buy it for me when he decides to go on Twitter. So yeah,
You're
I mean, follow me.
terrible person.
I mean, it's such a good opportunity.
Don't do it. The listeners are going to do it now.
They should. And John, I'd be really disappointed if you don't make the bio for this podcast episode. Like, we talk all things Ted Lasso, from mustaches to mustache rides. I think that was like my favorite line of this. But yeah, at Barbecue, hit me up.
Yeah, I definitely have to now, for sure. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. I know it is very late where you are, but I really appreciate you joining us from Buckingham Palace.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, even though it feels like Oscar night when I used to stay up through the night watching the Academy Awards going out in your time. But no, it's been great, and it's been as fascinating for me to see how the sports stuff plays out for you guys over there versus how it is here. I'm on Twitter. TJ, come and join us. It's warm. It's nice. Come play. At Matthew_drama. And yeah, that's where you can find me. It's been great. I'm going to go and check that the Queen is still sleeping, and then go to bed.
Okay, that is perfect. And really, the three of you will be joining us on plenty of SNL coverage in season 47. And we're also going to be covering Brooklyn Nine-Nine coming up. So this is going to be really fun. If you love Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or maybe you've always wanted to watch it and you're listening to this podcast, go get caught up. It is Andy Samberg's show. It is really, really interesting to talk about another SNL adjacent show. It is very different than Ted Lasso, but much more in the typical sitcom variety. But it's going to be very interesting to talk about. Our final season is 10 episodes. It's airing on 5 Thursdays, 2 episodes each Thursday. And we're going to be live after the episodes, about 15 minutes after, on YouTube, breaking down those episodes throughout the final season of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So that's going to be coming up throughout August as we slowly head towards season 47. As far as our SNL coverage is concerned, we're going to have an interview with a very fun SNL alumni coming up in a couple of weeks. So for the SNL fans who want to get a little bit of SNL content, I think you will enjoy that, as well as some Ted Lasso coverage later in the season. To keep up with everything we are doing, please follow us at SNL Stats on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all the socials, and subscribe to us on Podcatcher. Yeah, exactly. We're on TikTok too, TJ. Subscribe to us on YouTube or any podcatcher to never miss any episode that we were doing. This was so much fun to talk about Ted Lasso. I felt as free as people doing it in the forest, just talking with the three of you. So I hope that I hope you guys enjoyed our coverage. My name is Jon Schneider. You can find me at You can find me at Jon Schneider 24 to hear my thoughts as well. We will see you all next time, guys. Have a great week ahead.
But we're here for the numbers as well. So let's get statistical, so unpredictable, here on SNL Stats.